The whole point of moving away from oil was to make the world less dependent on a single resource controlled by a few countries. Instead, we may be walking straight into a new version of the same trap. Because the clean energy future doesn't run on oil, it runs on a handful of metals buried in your phone, your electric car, and every wind turbine and solar panel on Earth, and countries are already fighting over them. Today, we follow the money into the story of the new oil. Let's start with the shift that's happening all around us. The world is trying to move off fossil fuels and toward electric cars, giant batteries, solar, and wind. But here's what most people miss. Those technologies run on a completely different set of raw materials: lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, and a group of elements called rare earths, and they need a lot of them. An electric car requires roughly 6 times more minerals than a gasoline car. A single wind turbine can contain tons of them. So as the world races to quit oil, demand for these minerals is exploding, and that changes everything, because these minerals are becoming the new oil. Think about what oil meant in the last century. Whoever controlled it held enormous power over the global economy. These critical minerals are heading the same way. You cannot build an electric car, a wind farm, a guided missile, or an advanced computer chip without them. The countries that control the supply gain huge leverage. The countries that don't become dependent. But here's the twist that makes this story so different from oil and so much more dangerous for the West. With oil, power came from having it under your ground. With these minerals, the real power isn't in mining them, it's in processing them. And those are two very different things. Mining is actually spread around the world. Australia, Chile, and several African nations pull these minerals out of the earth. But turning that raw ore into the pure, usable material that goes into a battery or a magnet, that step, called refining, is dominated by one country, China. The numbers are staggering. China refines around 70% of the world's strategic minerals on average. For rare earths specifically, it processes more than 90%. And it controls the overwhelming majority of the entire battery supply chain. So even if you dig lithium out of the Australian desert, there's a good chance it gets shipped to China to be turned into something useful. China spent decades quietly building this dominance, while much of the West simply wasn't paying attention. And that processing dominance is the whole game. It's the same lesson as the chip war. You can dig minerals out of the ground almost anywhere. But if only one country can refine them at scale, then everyone depends on that one country. The refinery is the choke point. And in 2025, China showed the world exactly what that choke point means. It restricted the export of rare earths and battery materials. The effect was immediate and brutal. Outside of China, prices for some of these materials spiked to as much as 6 times higher than inside China. Car makers and manufacturers around the world were suddenly scrambling. It was a demonstration of raw power, a message that China can choke the entire green transition and much of the modern weapons industry whenever it chooses. The same rare earths at the heart of the chip war are a weapon here too. That wake-up call set off a global scramble. The United States, Europe, and their allies are now racing to break free of this dependence. They're funding new mines, trying to build their own refineries, striking deals with resource-rich countries across Africa, Latin America, and Australia, and stockpiling minerals for emergencies. There's even talk of a new scramble for the resources of the developing world, but catching up is genuinely hard. Building a refinery takes years, costs a fortune, and is often dirty and unpopular. And China holds a decade-long head start, plus the ability to flood the market and drop prices whenever a new competitor appears, choking it before it can grow. This is a race that will take 10 years or more to run. Now here's an interesting flip side. The countries that are rich in these minerals, Chile and Argentina with lithium, the Democratic Republic of Congo with cobalt, Indonesia with nickel, suddenly find themselves holding valuable cards. Some have even floated the idea of teaming up into a kind of lithium OPEC to control supply and prices, just like oil producers did. But it comes with a warning we've seen before: the resource curse. Being handed a valuable mineral can bring wealth, or it can bring exploitation, corruption, and dependence on a single volatile export. And there's a bitter irony hiding in all of this. Mining these so-called green minerals can be incredibly damaging to the environment. The clean energy future has a very messy supply chain. So why does all of this matter to you? Because the price and availability of electric cars, phones, laptops, and almost every modern device now depend on this quiet struggle over minerals. The cost and speed of the entire energy transition, something that touches your electricity bill and your future, hinges on who controls them, and it's reshaping global power itself. The nations that dominate these minerals and their processing will hold the same kind of leverage that oil producers wielded for the last 100 years. The green future, in other words, has its own hard geopolitics, and it's already being fought over right now, mostly out of sight. So the move beyond oil is not the end of resource wars, it's the beginning of a new one. Watch 3 things: which countries actually manage to build their own refineries, how far China goes with its export controls, and whether the mineral-rich nations start banding together into cartels of their own. Because just like the century before it, whoever controls the new oil may end up controlling the next one. If this made the news make more sense, that is exactly what this channel is for. The money story behind the headlines. Subscribe and we'll break down the next one together.